Around the time of release of Honkai Star Rail, there were a group of people who expressed their dissatisfaction with HSR's combat, pointing out how it only has 3 buttons, which makes it very limiting to play in terms of options, as compared to your standard turn-based games out in the market. My opinion at the time was that simplicity won't become an issue if the game environment expands on decision-making scenarios. In other words, simplify, but expand. This did end up being the case early in the game, in the form of bosses and elites that had mechanics that would serve as disruptors to a player's pre-planned battle strategy, and thus incentivizes players to play in an unorthodox manner. This resulted in unique battle experiences, which added to the fun of combat. But unfortunately, these moments mainly took place in early to mid-game scenarios, because once players got strong enough to brute force, and enemy punishment became way less lethal than what it was, the environment significantly shifted, with not only future boss designs becoming much more simplistic and one-dimensional, but the future playable characters suffered the same fate. To explain what I mean, I need to give some additional info, so join me as I take you, the viewer, down this rabbit hole of Honkai Star Rail's basic problem. So at some point in between 2024 to 2025, this discussion about the 3-button combat in HSR resurfaced again. Now, because my mindset at the time was different to what it was in 2023, I came to a realization that I never played a single gacha turn-based game other than HSR. And so I picked up 3 different turn-based gacha games within the past 2 years. The first one being Black Clover Mobile, which sadly EOS'd. The second one being Wizardry Variants Daphne, and the third one being Epic 7. Now, while all 3 of these games displayed very different combat experiences, I'm mainly going to be talking about Epic 7's combat system because it's the most similar to HSR's 3-button layout, with some additions of its own. Now, I know Epic 7 is a PvP-oriented gacha game, but it also has PvE content as well, with characters that were designed to be used just for PvE content. The aspect I want to laser focus on is the 3 buttons. S1 serves as the basic attack, S2 generally serves as the stronger attack or the skill, and S3 generally serves as the ultimate. Now, unlike HSR's skill point system, Epic 7's skills operate on a turn cooldown system. But here's the big question I have to ask. If cooldowns were removed in Epic 7, is there any incentive to use S1? The answer is, it depends on the character, but most of the time, yes. The S1s on a lot of characters are not as basic as it's made out to be. Even though there's no cooldown on it, it can have additional abilities included to incentivize its use, such as implanting various debuffs, action forwarding the active character, triggering a dual attack, that would be equivalent to a follow-up attack in HSR, or serving as an install for a character's main gimmick. Now I'll impose the same question to HSR. If skill points were removed in HSR, is there any incentive to use basic attack? The answer is, it depends on the character, but most of the time, no. And this is where the problem starts to reveal itself. Now, the basic attack in HSR already has a inherently lower value to make use of over the skill, for the reason that the basic attack generates less energy for the ultimate as compared to the skill. Now, there are a few characters such as Sparkle, Linksha, and Anaxa whose basic attack generates the same amount of energy as the skill, but this does not incentivize you to use it. It's more so it feels slightly less punishing to use. Let me show you characters that have basic attacks that feel worthwhile or more incentivized to use as compared to solely skill spamming under favorable conditions. And I want you all to pay attention to a certain trend that slowly starts to reveal itself. I'll talk about the characters in order of release to better highlight my point later on. Starting with version 1.0, Preservation Trailblazer has an enhanced basic attack that deals more toughness damage and provides a self-heal. Asta's basic attack inflicts a dot debuff, and after obtaining E2 and E4, the incentive to spam skill is reduced. Tingyun's basic attack, specifically the talent attached to a basic attack, is a special case for 2 specific reasons. The first being when buffing Shui Yi. Since Shui Yi's damage increase applies to all elements, Tingyun's basic attack would actually contribute a noticeable amount of DPS to the battle. The second scenario being buffing Cyrene after Cyrene buffs Hysolence. Thanks to the coding of the game, this method now gives Tingyun the ability for a basic attack to detonate Hysolence dots. Qing Chui is a uniquely designed character as the usage of basic attack and skill complement each other, rather than her being a skill spammy character. Bronya's basic attack pushes her up on the action order thanks to her talent. Zila's basic attack pushes her up on the action order thanks to her advanced trace. Honourable mentions in this version are Herta, Saval, Natasha and Welt, as these characters have eidolons that improve their basic attack, but the improvement is not enough to give incentive to use basic attack on these characters. Version 1.1, Yukon's basic attack, with an added talent, has increased toughness break and damage, and due to the philosophy of her design being a support character that would contribute damage, the incentive to use basic attack was present. Luocha's basic attack would become increasingly incentivized to use once his zone was active, to provide AoE healing to the whole party. Version 1.2, Luca, just like Qingchui, has an incentive to use both basic attack and skill, as his kit complements using both. Kafka, specifically pre-buff Kafka, although her basic attack does nothing extra, it was her old follow-up attack that only triggered upon another character using basic attack. This added a team-wide incentive to basic attack. Version 1.3, Tang Heng imbibed the Lunay, almost one-to-one with Qingchui in playstyle, with basic attack and skill complementing each other in usage. Version 2.0, Black Swan's basic attack inflicts more Arcana stacks on one enemy as compared to her skill. Version 2.1, Gallagher has an enhanced basic attack that gives an AoE heal, attack down debuff, and increased toughness break. Version 2.7, Fugue has an enhanced basic attack that applies defense down and has increased toughness break. Version 3.4, Finon in his ultimate state has different use cases for his basic and counter skill, though one could argue that if his stacks were just as infinite as skill points, then spamming meteors would always be the way. And finally, version 3.7, Remembrance Trailblazer has an enhanced basic attack that does AoE damage, breaks toughness regardless of element, and gives the same amount of charge from him as the skill does. Do you notice how the early cast of characters were more creative in gameplay design, having a kit that benefited from all three button inputs? And do you also notice how their creativity slowly diminished to the point that it's going to feel like once in a blue moon that a new character will release with a kit that lets you interact with both the basic attack and skill? Now majority of newer characters are designed to be one button focused. Now you may be thinking, but that's why the skill point system exists. It gives universal value to basic attacks, because without them, how can you use skills? And to that I answer, well, you're right, by 1.0 standards. But by today's standards, when was the last time you felt the scarcity of skill points in combat? As the game has aged on, there's been more and more mechanics added that alleviates the SP scarcity. It wasn't so bad early on. We had Bronya's first Eidolon and a light cone that helped with SP management, Arlon whose skills consumed his HP instead of skill points, and Hanya whose skill had an ability to generate a skill point. And now these very four factors, Eidolons, light cones, skills that consume a resource other than skill points, and abilities that generate skill points, have evolved and been pushed so much that there is now an abundance of team comps that can operate perfectly fine in a playstyle that normally wouldn't be possible to work. To name a couple of examples, when it comes to Eidolons, E1 Firefly to remove SP consumption on enhanced skill, and E1 DHPT to generate a skill point after using ultimate. For light cones, we have Verta and Ceridra's light cone that generates a skill point after using ultimate, with no other underlying condition added to it. Skills that consume a resource other than skill points. It started small with Imbibe the Lunay and Jingliu, but became much more extreme with Mighty, Casterus and Evernight. The HP consumption becomes completely negligible once you have the healing to offset it, which makes the cost completely free. And abilities that generate skill points, Sparkle, Archer, and any character that has an Eidolon that generates a skill point. With so many methods to alleviate the SP scarcity, why basic attack? Why does this button exist? What does this button even do for us? They might as well just remove the button and call the game Honkai Skill Rail, not because the game has actual skill, but because at the end of the day, every new character just wants to use the skill button, and if you can't use the skill button, then you have a skill issue. One honourable mention I want to add is the inclusion of light cones that can give a basic attack an additional ability. The popular two to mention are What is Real, which gives a self-heal upon basic attacking, and Multiplication, which gives action advance upon basic attack. Unfortunately, both these light cones are attached to the Path of Abundance. There is also Acheron's signature light cone for her, to give her basic attack the ability to inflict a debuff for her stacks, but that just makes the basic less punishing to use and give more incentive to use basic attack. And so with all that has been said, I think that this basic problem will continue to persist throughout the game's lifespan, as it feels like the philosophy of designing character kits has significantly shifted to be more one-dimensional and straightforward, with zero nuance to accommodate noticeably different playstyles for said characters. I do have one solution though, and that is to give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below what you guys think about this problem. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Am I just making a mountain out of a molehill? Let me know, and I'll see you guys in the next video.